Welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into Module 5 of the drug development lifecycle, submission and approval. It's incredibly common to think that once you finish up those massive clinical trials, you're at the finish line. But actually, finishing those trials is really just the beginning. It kicks off this highly structured, incredibly intense legal-style argument for a drug's approval. You aren't just handing over a big stack of data to regulators, you are meticulously pleading a case. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We're going to cover beyond the last patient, US and EU regulatory routes, building the evidence dossier, pre-submission strategy, surviving the review clocks, and finally, labels, pathways, and approval. It's a fascinating journey, so let's get right to it. Section 1, Beyond the Last Patient, where we'll be shattering that finish line myth. So picture this. You see a press release celebrating last patient last visit, or LPLV. Is that the end of the line? Honestly, absolutely not. I need to emphatically clarify that it is merely a milestone. There are typically several months of grueling work separating that final patient visit from an actual filed application. Think of LPLV as just step 1. Once that last visit happens, no more data changes are allowed. That's step 2, the database lock. Then comes the intense statistical analysis against the preset plan to generate your top-line results. Like, did the trial actually meet its endpoint? After that, full clinical study reports have to be meticulously written up. And then, and only then, do you assemble and file the application. The main takeaway here? A submission is a highly structured legal argument, answering one core question. Do the benefits of this medicine outweigh the risks for this specific population? It is definitely not just a massive data dump. Moving right along to Section 2, US and EU regulatory routes, or as I like to think of it, choosing the right court. There's no single global approval for a new medicine, so you have to plead your case in the appropriate jurisdiction. In the US, the FDA divides applications based on what the drug actually is. First up is the NDA, or New Drug Application. This is governed by 21 CFR 314 and covers chemically synthesized small molecule drugs, like our case study drug, Veltarib. Second, we have the BLA, or Biologics License Application, under 21 CFR 601. This is for large molecule biologics grown in living cells, like our contrasting case study, Novaximab. And why does this matter? Well, for biologics, the manufacturing process essentially defines the product. Because of that, biologics face much heavier manufacturing scrutiny, and the BLA actually licenses the product and its manufacturing process together. And this brilliantly illustrates how the European Union takes a totally different approach. Over in the EU, you submit a Marketing Authorization Application, or MAA. Now, there are 4 possible routes, but for new active substances like Veltarib, you use the centralized procedure. You submit one single application to the European Medicines Agency, or EMA. Their scientific committee, the CHMP, does the heavy lifting on the review, and if successful, the European Commission grants a single EU-wide authorization valid across all member states at exactly the same time. Pretty efficient, right? Next up is Section 3, Building the Evidence Dossier, where we assemble the common technical document. So now that we know our regulatory courts, we need our evidence. Regulators globally use a standardized structure called the Common Technical Document, or CTD. These days, it's almost always an electronic eCTD. Think of it like a giant 5-level pyramid. Module 1 is the regional administrative stuff, literally the only part that changes depending on if you're filing in the US or the EU. Modules 2 through 5 are your harmonized scientific core. You've got summaries in Module 2, quality and manufacturing in Module 3, and non-clinical lab and animal reports in Module 4. But the big one to remember is Module 5. It contains the clinical study reports, and it is usually the largest section by far because it houses every single piece of human clinical trial data, from Phase 1 all the way through Phase 3. All right, let's jump into Section 4, Pre-Submission Strategy. The golden rule here, don't surprise the reviewer. You have to engage in pre-trial strategy long before you file. Sponsors really have to adopt a meet early, meet often philosophy. You might get scientific advice during Phases 1 and 2. You'll definitely have an end of Phase 2 meeting to agree on your pivotal Phase 3 plan. But right before you file, you have a pre-NDA or pre-BLA meeting. Think of this as your absolute final pre-trial hearing. You use it to confirm the exact format and content of the massive dossier you're about to submit. Doing this is absolutely crucial because it heavily reduces a catastrophic risk, the dreaded refuse to file. If your application is administratively incomplete, the regulator won't even look at it. They'll just hand it right back. So this meeting prevents that exact nightmare scenario. Which brings us to the main event, Section 5, Surviving the Review Clocks. The countdown begins. Let's look at the US timelines first. Sponsors actually pay a user fee when they file. And in return, the FDA commits to a timeline known as the PDUFA goal date. PDUFA stands for the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. And these fees matter because they literally fund FDA reviewer capacity to get medicines to patients faster. So, day 0 is submission. By roughly day 60, they make that crucial filing decision we just talked about. If they file it, the clock is officially running. A standard review goal is about 10 months. But if your drug provides a meaningful advance over existing options, you might score priority review, which shrinks that timeline down to just 6 months. Now contrast that with the EU's EMA's 210-day clock. This clock is wild because it only counts the regulator's active working time. The most stressful feature here for surely any sponsor is the clock stop. Right around day 120, the regulator issues a major list of questions, and the countdown literally freezes. The sponsor then scrambles to answer these questions, and the clock only restarts when they submit their responses. Around day 180, you might get a second, shorter list of outstanding issues, and finally at day 210, the CHMP issues its scientific opinion. But hey, what happens if the review uncovers a serious problem? Well, in the US, you receive what's called a complete response letter, or CRL. It's really easy to view a CRL as a catastrophic rejection, but actually, scratch that. You should reframe it as a not yet rather than a final no. The FDA is explicitly stating they can't approve the application as submitted, but they list out the specific deficiencies. If the sponsor can fix those, which, granted, might require new analyses or even new data, they can resubmit and a fresh review clock begins.
Finally, Section 6, Labels, Pathways, and Approval, Crossing the Finish Line.
Let's assume the review goes perfectly. The most important document to come out of this entire process is the label. The label is the ultimate legal boundary for marketing a drug. It explicitly tells doctors exactly how to use it safely, what the doses are, and what the known risks are. A company literally cannot market the drug outside the bounds of this label. In the US, it's called the Prescribing Information, or PI, negotiated with the FDA. In the EU, it's the Summary of Product Characteristics, or SMPC, agreed with the CHMP. They serve the exact same purpose, just with different regional formats. We also need to briefly touch on expedited pathways. For serious diseases with huge unmet medical needs, regulators do offer faster routes. The US has Fast Track, Breakthrough Therapy, Accelerated Approval, and Priority Review. The EU has Prime and Accelerated Assessment. These programs can be a real game changer, offering more intensive regulator contact or shorter review clocks. But, and this is absolutely crucial, while these pathways speed up the process, they never ever lower the ultimate evidence bar. The benefit-risk standard remains exactly the same. So there it is. You get that approval letter or EC decision. You have an approved label. You have officially crossed the finish line of Module 5. But remember, an application is a living dossier. An approval is really just a handover. Which brings us to a pretty provocative question. What happens when all of this perfectly curated, carefully controlled trial data finally meets the completely messy, unpredictable real world in Phase 4? Well, that's a whole new chapter of the drug life cycle waiting to be explored. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.